안녕하세요. UK톡스 웨비나 시리즈의 마지막 세션에 참여해 주셔서 감사합니다. 저는 주한영국문화원 교육사회실 소속 엄선현입니다. 팬데믹으로 인해 유학을 준비하던 분들의 학업 계획에 많은 변수가 생겼죠. 하지만 양질의 교육에 대한 열정은 좀처럼 꺼지지 않습니다. 여전히 미래에 대한 다양한 선택지를 원하는 분들을 위해 영국 유학, 그리고 진로를 주제로 총 10개의 웨비나를 준비하였는데요. 400명이 넘는 분들이 신청해 주셨어요. 지금 저희가 시작하는 세션은 그 10개의 웨비나 중에 마지막 세션입니다. 이번 세션에서는 예술 분야에 대하여 높은 경쟁력을 지닌 영국의 유수 대학교 3곳의 교수님 및 교직원과 함께 영국 예술대학이 선호하는 아트, 디자인 지원자에 대해서 알아볼 건데요. 포트폴리오와 자기소개서 위주로 이야기를 나눌 예정입니다. 우선 첫 번째로 코벤트리 대학교의 린지 챔버스 홍보처장님께서 말씀해 주실 거고요. 그 다음에는 하트퍼드셔 대학교의 메건 나이트, 노섬브리아대학교의 로즈 웡 교수님 이렇게 세 분께서 각각 15분씩 준비한 발표를 해주실 예정입니다. 시작에 앞서 간단한 당부 말씀드리겠습니다. 본 웨비나는 영어로 약 1시간 동안 진행될 예정이고요. 연사분들이나 참여 대학에 관해 궁금한 점이 있다면 언제든지 채팅창에 질문해 주세요. 지금 백스테이지에 대기 중인 각 대학 담당관들이 정성껏 답변 드릴 예정입니다. 컴퓨터로 접속하신 분들은 우측에서 채팅창을 확인하실 수 있고 모바일 기기로 접속하신 경우 상단의 물음표 아이콘을 누르시면 채팅창이 나옵니다. 채팅창에서 공감 가는 질문이나 마음에 드는 답변이 있다면 좋아요 버튼을 눌러주세요. 웨비나 종료 전에 랜덤으로 한 분께 약소하지만 저희가 마음을 담아 준비한 선물을 증정할 예정입니다. 끝까지 자리를 지켜주시면 매우 감사하겠습니다. 그럼 지금부터 시작할 건데요. 잠시만요. Hi speakers! Thank you so much for waiting for our opening in Korean. We are ready to start our first presentation. So, everyone, I'm honored to introduce the first speaker, Lindsey Chambers from Coventry University. She will explain why an art and design portfolio is such important. Lindsay?
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us here today at this event. We're looking forward to talking to you about why a portfolio is so valuable. So move on to the next slide, please. So I work in the School of Art and Design, and I'm part of the senior management team that oversees the well-being and the delivery of your experience when you come and work alongside us and be creative collaborators, as we like to think of you. And we've got a very large school. We've got 2,000 students that we look after in total. So we're very much geared up to having a strong student experience, and making is really part of what we do. And obviously seeing your portfolio gives us an indication of what you like doing and why you're suitable to come in our course. So next slide, please. I feel as though I should be moving them along. So why is an art and design portfolio? And actually it was when I was asked to do this, it's so much part of our DNA to see portfolios from you guys. It made me think about sort of, why is it expected and why do we want it? And there are a few key things why it's important that we see your portfolio. Next slide, please. So the first thing is to identify whether we're right for one another. So there are lots of courses in the UK and around the world, and as well as the portfolio, obviously there's a personal statement and your qualifications, but really that portfolio identifies whether we're right for one another. It gives us a real clear indication and a window into your skill set and kind of the way you think about things, and that really evidences your journey and your experience in art and your creativity today. So primarily it's about identifying whether we're right for one another. There are lots of similar courses run around the world, but they're all done in slightly different ways with very different staff. So this is why it's important that we have a look at the work and see if you're right for us and you're right for us. So next slide, please. So one of the most important things about a portfolio is identifying your potential. So by that, I mean, not just where you're at now and the beautiful final pieces that you may have produced as part of your portfolio, but also your journey, how you got there, and seeing your growth and seeing your development really gives us an indication of your potential. So we see that as a little microclimate for perhaps what your potential can be across the 3 or 4 years when you're with us. So seeing your growth in your portfolio, that's where we identify your potential. How far can you go with us? And that's very, very much kind of what we want to identify from that body of work that you put forward to us. So next slide, please. So diversity, Coventry University is an incredible international melting pot and cultural exchange university, and we really pride ourselves on that. And our students, they're very often surprised at how much they gain from working alongside students from the UK and all around the world. And because we have that huge level of diversity in the School of Art and Design, you all come from very, very different educational backgrounds. You have different tastes, you have different likes. So for us, it's a real opportunity to see the diversity of that arts education that you've had, or whether you've been self-taught, because people who are interested in creative courses come from lots of different backgrounds. And that's really worth bearing in mind. So we're very broad and inclusive in our way of looking at portfolios. And portfolios, even though perhaps traditionally we would have sort of seen 10 to 15 sheets of paper across 2 or 3 projects, actually, because of its sort of digital media sort of like through the roof, and we're very visual literate people, you know, we're looking at Instagram accounts, you know, we're looking at websites. So kind of by what we mean by portfolio is a body of work that can be presented in different ways. So that diversity is really important. We understand kind of what we're looking at and where your background is, and that's something that we want to see coming through in your portfolio. So next slide, please. Obviously, all you know, if you're applying for a creative course, we want to see evidence of skill. So this is your opportunity to demonstrate to us what skills you have, which is why a broad range of work is always so important. But this is where seeing your skill and what you're interested in is really important. So as academics, we can see skills perhaps for one area in another. So if you're doing very amazing, beautiful life drawing, you could be very, very suitable for a games art course, because they do sort of work with character design and environment design. So we can cross-reference what we see, you know, sort of your skills from one image or something you present into another. But it's always good to see kind of skills in the subject area you're applying for, because it obviously shows curiosity and your sort of passion for the area. So demonstrating that skill, we as academics can see how far we can push you. So on to the next slide, please. Now, this is a bit controversial. It's important to us to see in your portfolio, and why it's important is to see your mistakes. In the sense that, and just to let you know, this sketchbook page isn't a mistake, but perhaps just an evidence of experimentation. So it's important for you to show us how your journey and your growth, this goes back to potential. This is why your portfolio is so important. We want to see things that you've left behind, that you haven't chosen to do, because it shows your thinking, it shows your thought process, it shows your critical thinking skills. Okay, so mistakes is really important, and that's very, very hard often when you want to put a perfect portfolio together to get into the course that you want to. But actually, as academics, it's really important that we see that, and it's something that we value. And so you have to be confident in saying, well, actually, I did this, it didn't work, it put me on this track, and this is my project. So showing those mistakes for us is really, really valuable, because actually that's all we ever do as creatives, is make mistakes and learn from them and do different things. And it's part of the process, and it will be part of the process when you come to university, of getting things wrong and creative freedom and being ambitious and brave by doing things you haven't done before. So showing us that journey, those mistakes, is really good. So it's a really important part of seeing that portfolio. So next slide. It's important in a portfolio, and why it's important is it's how you communicate to us. So and it demonstrates your what I call soft skills. So how you make a person that hasn't seen your project, isn't working alongside it with you, how you communicate your project to external people. So it's important in your portfolio to demonstrate visual communication. It can be in lots of different ways, whether that's mood boards, visual boards, but that's why it's important, because sort of making, designing, being a subject specialist is perhaps 30–40% of your time of what you'll do when you leave us. The rest of the time is how you communicate, work with others. So communication is really important, and you can show communication through your portfolio. So how you lay out things out is really important, because it reads well to us. So next slide. It's important that we get an understanding of what you like and what you're into, your taste, what you like, how you see things. Ways of seeing is really important, because we want a creative, active, passionate mind to work with, and having opinions of what you like, what you're into, is very much part of what we want to harness as a creative, because you are a whole package. So it's important that we have an understanding of where you're coming from beyond your technical ability. We want to see the person behind that, and that's really important to see within a portfolio. So next slide, please. What you have to remember is a portfolio, and academics always view it's more than the sum of any one part. So very often students worry about one drawing, is it good enough? And we take an overview of it. It's more than the one. It's just we take an overview and a holistic look at all of the work that you produce. So don't ever worry about one piece, because we take a view of it all. And it's important. This is why your portfolio is important, because we see that journey and we see the whole package in that presentation that you're going to show us. Next slide. So at Coventry, we've got a really broad range of courses, and what hangs all of those things together are common skills. So you can go into the next slide. And when, as academics, we can see that if you're applying for an automotive course, as an example, we can see that if you're doing life drawing or you're doing good perspective drawing, that we have the understanding of the interdisciplinary nature to know that you would be able to be successful perhaps in interior design, games art. So the skills that you would need on a games art course, which is environment design, character design, that is really suitable for interior design. So it's really important as us as academics, when we're looking, we just see the skills that underlie behind your portfolio as well as what you're showing us. So that's really important to remember as well. You could be an amazing photographer but applying for an architecture course, and we would see how that you're framing them or doing the composition for them, that you have sort of very clear visual skills. So think about, like I said, sort of more holistically. So my cat's just climbing up my back, sorry, there you go. So think about putting a variety of work in, and what you select shows kind of your skills, and we can see in them. Sorry, slightly distracted. So we can see the skills behind all of those projects and how they can be suitable for lots of different courses. So I think I'm probably coming up to my last slide. I think that might be it. A couple of minutes early. Yeah, so we put a lot of effort into preparing students to come to Coventry University, so sort of supporting your application, giving you portfolio guidance, and that translates through into our teaching excellence, and we're sort of very proud of that we see you as a whole journey and we want to support you through it. And I think that's it. I think that's my end slide. I've got any more questions, I think, and I think I've finished 2 minutes early, which I've tried to be kept on track. So I think the next slide is just an any more questions slide. Yep. So I can't hear you.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Can you hear me? I hope you can hear me now.
Okay. I can now. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I hope people found that useful.
Yes, that's what I just wanted to say. I found this session very useful, and thank you so much. So now let me introduce our next speaker, Rose Wong from the Northumbria University. She will talk about what UK universities want to see in your art and design portfolio. Rose?
Hi everybody.
Hi.
Thank you for attending the session. Right, first of all, I'm Rose Wong. I'm program leader for Design for Industry and 3D design. Next slide, please. I've been told to have a little brief background of my time at Northumbria. So I actually graduated from Northumbria many years ago on the 3D design program, which is more product furniture related. And then I went on to work as a designer as a residence. I recently found out that I think Sun Kuk Kwan University have something similar. So you might know what that is. And it's where you stay on after you graduate and you get to use the facilities, but obviously you don't pay fees and everything. And resulting from that, I started doing some part-time teaching onto the International Foundation, 3D design, and I taught a bit of engineering as well in the engineering faculty. I then went on to do a bit of MA, Design for Industry. So I've taught lots of different programs. So therefore, I've looked at a lot of different types of portfolios as well. I then went on to do a bit of international development in 3 regions, really. Well, countries, South Korea, Hong Kong, and southern China. So I've been to South Korea a few times, which is great. And as part of that, I was still doing a lot of part-time teaching as well as international development. I then went on to do some program leadership, and I'm still looking after 2 programs in the school, which is Design for Industry, which is what we call a 4-year thin sandwich, and 3D design, which is a 3-year full-time. Okay, next slide, please. So this is our campus. You may have seen this. I just wanted to show the size and obviously all the different schools and faculties. This is actually in central Newcastle. So just outside the dots is where you will see this, where the city centre is. The School of Design is actually number 6. So that is actually where you should be based when you apply for any art and design programme. The other art and design programme, I believe, is around about where 27, 28 is. Sorry, 27, 28 as well. So that's where the other buildings are, and that's where you'll find graphic design, interactive media. So we're dotted around. It looks quite a big campus. There's around about 32,000 students, and 10% of which are international students. And it takes about 10-15 minutes to walk from one side to another. Next slide, please. So I've been asked to answer this question today, what UK universities wants to see in a portfolio. I guess most are pretty similar. Obviously, I've only ever worked in Northumbria, so it's difficult to answer for the majority of the universities. But I believe we do look for very similar traits in portfolios. Next slide, please. So when I actually put this presentation together, I was concerned that I was actually looking for bad examples of student work. So I actually decided I wasn't going to show bad examples of current students or even portfolios that we looked at, because I don't want to get sued, really. It's quite difficult to actually use someone's work and say, right, this is a really bad example of your work, and I've used it in a presentation. So what I've actually done is I found examples online, pretty much, and this was actually in that kind of category. So this is what we don't want to see, and this is sometimes which we do see, is lots of gradients in the background, lots of huge text, and not actually placing your presentation neatly. Lots of crazy fonts, and you don't know where to look when you look at this page. It's just too much, and it looks like the person who's put it together hasn't put much care and attention into it. And you're actually selling suits as well, so obviously that's a very sleek, it's a very clean outfit. So this is a bad example, really. Next slide. So the next slide is also I found, which is presentation boards which were put together. And again, there's too much information we found. It's very overwhelming. You don't know where to look, you don't know where to focus. And just be careful that when you actually put a presentation, when you actually put a portfolio together, make sure it's quite clean and simple to look at. Next slide. What we also tend to see as well is where people put a portfolio together and they tend to shrink the slides and not actually the presentation board, sorry, and they don't actually consider how it is actually put together. So some people overstretch it and some people shrink it, and it just ruins all the proportions of the presentation. Next slide. So I actually found this. It's a student art guide, which is a very useful link. I just suddenly came upon it. And I'm not saying that everything has to be very neat and tidy. We want to see sketches. We want to see your creativity in a portfolio. So this is a very good example where a student is probably sat in a train station somewhere and probably used their sketchbook and just sat there and drawn a scene, I guess, observing a day, probably a day out or something. And obviously below it's just, again, it's experimentation with charcoal. It's still lovely. I mean, some people might think it's quite messy, but this shows creativity, this shows your skill, and this is what we want to see. We love to see process in your portfolio. Next, please. So this is actually an example of one of the first year projects that we ran, and it's actually a Korean student. And it took me a long time to explain to her, saying, right, we want to see your process, we want to see how you've actually developed in your model making in this project. And she didn't really understand why I wanted to see like what we call messy models. But this is what we love to see in portfolios. We love to see how things have developed. So we got her to take little pictures. These are all like really small models, and probably the size of little tennis balls. And we said, right, take a picture of it, show how they've developed, show the process. And this is just one quick presentation board that she put together. And we think it really worked, really. She does it a lot now, where she actually documents work that she's done, as opposed to think, right, it's just a quick model, I'll just bin it now. But keep photographing your work as you go along. Keep a diary of your work. I mean, you might go back and think, right, I probably won't use it, but it's good. It's better to have it rather than binning it. Next, please. So we move on to what we like to see. These are very good examples of some work that a second year student did. If you can look very closely, yes, she did study at Leeds. She was a mature student, and but then she redid her portfolio when she applied. So these show very clean, simple presentation techniques that we often see, and we often do actually see this a lot in Korean portfolios. And on the left, what she's actually done is she's done some graphics that she's actually created using a program called Illustrator, and then she's actually laid it out very neatly. We often find that text that is, when you actually write text onto a presentation board, when you do black, it's often very harsh. So what she's done is obviously like a soft grey. So things like that you could consider as well. And what I've done here is I've just shown two variations. One's graphics and the other one's like graphic design. This is like more of a personal project, the one on the right hand side, where she's actually created like business cards. Very clean, very simple, but they both still work as it is. Next slide, please. Again, same student. So she's actually made a product, which is growing herbs at home. And on the left-hand side, she's actually shown, again, the process of how the product actually works, and just really simple graphics, how she's got like a nice little arrow showing like how to actually go around looking at the project. Just little details like that we love to see. And on the right hand side, where she's actually used another experimentation of graphics as well, just looking at types of different fonts, variations of what she's actually thinking in her mind. She's actually translated, but it's not messy, it's really clean, so it works really well. Next slide, please. So this is the useful link that I showed. it's not part of Northumbria, by the way. It's just a useful link, and it's lots of various portfolios from around the world, which is worth using. Next slide, please. I think that's it. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rose. Thank you so much. It's been very useful. So I hope our attendees also find this very useful. And now we have our last speaker, Megan Knight from University of Hertfordshire, and she will talk about the significant importance of personal essay, personal statement for arts and design major, as much as portfolio. Megan?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? I've had some technical difficulties.
Yes.
Good. So next slide, please. So I'm the Associate Dean of the School of Creative Arts, and I'm going to talk about personal statements. Next slide, please. Okay, so as my colleague Lindsay said, we're looking for potential. It's important to remember when you apply to study art and design, you're not actually applying for a job as a designer. You're applying to learn how to be a designer or an artist. And so we're looking not for what you already know, but that you have the capacity to learn. So as with the portfolio, the personal statement is looking for your potential. So, and we are particularly interested in flexibility and adaptability. And where Lindsay talked about, show us the things that didn't work. It's a similar thing we're looking for. So it's the same issue of show us where you've had an idea and then it didn't work and things like that, because that tells us that you can learn, that you can make a mistake and you can learn from it. And that's really important. We're also looking for some imagination. What is really important for us, and I think when you apply to a British university, some of you may be applying to British and American and even Canadian and Australian and New Zealand schools, we're quite different from all of those. So in a British university, we actually get penalised by the government if you don't complete your degree. And that's quite an important thing to remember, because it means it's really important to us that this is a good match, that you're studying at the right school. And so that's really, really important, because it actually is, it's bad for us if we make a decision, make you an offer, and it turns out this isn't the right choice. This isn't the right place for you, or the right time, or the right kind of program. So we're looking to see that you understand who we are. It's also really important, and I've got a note here to say, not an American university admissions essay. And I know it's frustrating, because if you're applying to different universities, you don't want to write 10 or 15 different statements or different essays. But the American university admissions essay is actually supposed to be an essay in which you tell a story about yourself, and they're looking at your writing and your construction and everything else. And we're not really paying attention to that in the personal statement. So it's a different kind of thing. So we're looking for a good match with the program and with the school, so that you understand the content of the program and that you also understand the culture of the environment. Next slide, please. Sorry, I didn't set my timer, so I'm just going to quickly set my stopwatch so I know that I'm not running over. Okay. Tell me something about yourself. It doesn't have to be about the subject, but it needs to be something that you think is significant. It doesn't have to be a boast. It doesn't have to be showing off. It might be, when I was young, I really, really wanted to be a doctor. But in the last few years, I've realized that this is where my talents are. It might be something about your family. It might be something about how important fashion is to you, or how important film is to you, or music, depends on what program you're studying for. So something that makes you stand out from others. I can read what you've done at school. I know what your grades are. For a lot of our courses, we are also looking at your portfolio, although in our school, because we also do music and we do film production, it's just the statement. Tell us who we are. Tell us that you understand the course, you understand the industry you're going into, and that you know who this university is. And I will say this is one of the biggest ones for us. When I read a statement that says, I have always wanted to study at the most famous fashion school in the UK, I know two things. I know that either you've applied to Central St Martin's and you've just thrown your application at us as well, or that you really have no idea who we are. We are a very good and have a really specific, very good fashion program for what it does, but we are not the most famous fashion school in the UK. Don't flatter us with things that aren't true. And that's really, really important, because if you tell us you are the best school and I've always wanted to study with you, if that's true, that's brilliant. But then tell us why you know that. You know, my uncle went there and he has always said it's the best school ever. But if you're just saying that because you think that flattering us will make us want to accept you, it's not, because we know that when you come to us and we are not what you thought, you might drop out and go to another university. And we don't want that. Okay. So really, really important. We are more interested in why you want to do this course at this university than to hear how amazing we are. Also, one of the other differences between applying for a British university and an American university, in a British university, you are applying to do a specific thing. You are applying to do product and industrial design. You're applying to do fine art at this university. In an American university or a Canadian university, you are usually applying broadly to a faculty of art and design, or possibly even just to the university. So when we see a statement, we really want to know, why do you want to be a product designer? What do you know about what product design is? Okay. And why do you want to study with us? So that's really important. I'm afraid to tell you this, but you have to do your homework. You have to really think a bit about what it is you want to do and where you want to do it, and tailor your statement, write your statement for those people. Next slide, please. So I'm faster than I thought. I always tend to do this. So a few things. The personal statement is our chance to learn something about you and to decide if you will fit in with our course. So it doesn't have to be very long. British university personal statements are usually a lot shorter than American admissions essays. So it's probably a page is probably plenty for us. And just some information about you, why you want to study this course and why you want to be the thing at the end, because our programs are all, you know, architecture because you want to be an architect, fashion design because you want to be a fashion designer. So tell us why you want to be a fashion designer. Tell us why you want to be a filmmaker or a photographer, okay? Because we're looking to see that you're making the right choice. And often we will read this and we'll look at this and we'll think, I'm not sure the student really understands what this job is or what this industry is. And that will make us doubt sometimes maybe this isn't the right choice for them. This is going to sound a little bit cynical, but please don't make things up. And I am going to say this, and this is not necessarily, I don't know any of you, and I'm sure that this is not advice for you, but it's general advice I give to everybody. We do check personal statements against an international database of pre-prepared personal statements and admissions essays. Okay? And we do reject applicants outright if we find anything that indicates that they went to a website and said, oh, find me an admissions essay for architecture, and sent it to us. Okay, tell us something genuine about yourself. Maybe it might be, nobody in my family's ever worked in art and design, and I don't really know that much about this, but all I know is that I just love to draw. It's the most important thing in my life, and I just really want to make the world a visually more interesting place. That's more real than someone who finds an essay about the importance of Yves Saint Laurent on the development of feminist ideas with his use of the androgynous suit in 1960 something. I believe the statement that says, I don't know why or that much, but clothes are the most important thing in the world to me. And I have more faith in that student than I am in the one who's found me something that they think is an impressive piece of research rather than something personal. You have limited number of words, so focus on the things we need to know. The last thing is proofread carefully. Now, as I said, the British system, we have our own ways of testing your English. So we're not going to be too worried if your personal statement is not perfect English, okay? But please do proofread it carefully. Please do have someone look over it or take some time and look at it again, because it's hard to read something that's not very well written. It can be very difficult to get the sense of something at times. Next slide. I think that was my last slide. I've taken less time than I thought. And I also have to apologize. Lindsay clearly won because my cat is fast asleep on the bed and has failed. I was trying to get him to come and entertain everyone like Lindsay's cat did. But unfortunately, he's 15 and he doesn't do what he's told anymore. He just wants to sleep. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Megan. I personally find this session very useful and helpful to have a better understanding about personal statement. Actually, I also had misleaded understanding before, maybe. Yeah, so I think now I have clear picture about how we should write our personal statement to get in the UK universities. So thank you so much for the session. And now let's move to the Q&A session. So please type your questions in the Q&A chat box and give a thumbs up if you find the answer useful. Now I'm going to pick some interesting questions and ask the academics and the associate head. All right. Okay. Yeah. Is it okay? I will give you like 1 or 2 questions first. Then if you want to answer, if you want to provide answers to this question, then just raise your hand and I will pick one of you, okay? So the first question is it possible for non-art majors without formal training to major art in college? I'm really passionate about art drawing. So she doesn't have art background, no professional skill, but she really loved to drawing and she's wanting to know if she can get it. And the second question will be, all right, I have a bachelor degree, but I didn't major in fine art. I participated, so it's actually, it's a very similar one, but she's a little bit more experienced. So any of you want to answer this question? Oh, okay, Megan, please.
It is, sometimes people do get in without having done art or design at high school or college. Some of it will depend on the exact course you're applying for, and some of it will I think that my colleagues from the other universities will probably agree with me. If you apply to us and we think that there's potential but you're not ready, we will often recommend you come to us and do foundation first. So it's always worth applying because you might get really good advice and it might be, okay, we think you can do this, but we want you to do 1 year foundation, which is just 1 year intense art and design, and then you can come on to our program. So.
Lindsay, please.
Yeah, I think at Coventry University, we have standard applications, and what we do is if somebody doesn't have a major in art, you're considered non-standard. So we would take it on a case-by-case scenario about one, if you have got any work, let's have a look at it. Have a look at that personal statement, and it is on a sort of case-by-case scenario because we don't want to set you up to fail. We recognise that people come to the creative arts from a broad range of backgrounds, and perhaps they've chosen a subject and realised it wasn't for them and they want to redirect their career. So we try to be really open and inclusive of that. But Megan's right, if we don't think you're right, we don't want to sort of set you up for problems later. We'll recommend a foundation, but kind of we'll just want to see what creative work you've got and sort of make a decision. So it's a possibility, is what we're saying. It's a possibility, yeah.
Thank you both. So I'm going to give you next question. This is more practical one. So how many pages would good portfolio have? So you could advise like the format and the volume of the portfolio or a personal essay. So who would like to provide answer for this? Okay, Rose, please.
It varies really, because obviously we see a lot of portfolios, and I've seen portfolios where it's like 80 odd pages, which is quite lengthy really. And then I've seen ones that are just 15 pages. So it depends on your experience really, because obviously if you're applying for like a first year of a degree, then maybe 20 or 30 is fine. But obviously if you're applying for more like say second or third year, we would expect to see more and maybe like justify why you should go into to do a shorter degree as opposed to the full length of the degree. But yeah, not too much though. I mean, I have seen 200 pages and that's just a bit overwhelming, I'd say.
I think it's just fair to say that we can usually identify within about 20 pages if you've got the skills. Yeah. So it's as much about selecting out and not including stuff as what you put in. So, you know, you should be able to demonstrate your set of skills within 20 or 30 pages. I think we say 20 at Coventry. Yeah. And it's probably fair to say 2 or 3 different projects in that, you know, because we want to see diversity. We want to show us you've got skills in different areas as well. So I think variety and diversity is really important to show.
All right, well done, thank you. And the next question, does the standard for portfolio vary depending on the type of the major? For example, fine art, fashion design, interior design, and theater design. Okay, so please answer for this, Megan.
I wouldn't say the standard is different, but what we are looking for is different. So if you're applying for what we would call 3-dimensional design, which includes things like product and architecture, and fashion is a form of 3-dimensional design, then we're looking for different kinds of work than if, say, you're applying for illustration. Our university, if you look at the websites for the courses, each course has its own portfolio advice, and it's always worth looking at that. So it's not that it's you must be better to get into architecture than to get into interior architecture. We're looking for different things and different evidence.
Thank you, Megan. The next question is about transfer from Korea to UK. So the question is, I was studying fashion design in Korea, but I changed my major to British textile and tried to enter a bachelor degree. Can I enter a bachelor degree without a foundation course? So who would like to give an answer for this? Okay, Megan,
I
please.
can answer for my university, but I think the answer might be different for Coventry and Northumbria, so you might want to get every answer. It's always worth applying for what we call advanced entry. We do each case on a case-by-case basis. So we will look at the qualification, what you've been studying already. We'll look at your transcript and your portfolio. There is a process. There's a government organisation in the UK that will tell me that 2 years of a bachelor's in Korea is equivalent to this many years in the UK, and we will check that. It's always worth trying to see if it can be done, but a lot of the time with us, it's a match. So it's a question of, our programs are very specific. So there are things you have to learn in first year. And so we might reject you for advanced entry, not because you're not really good and you haven't studied useful stuff, you just haven't studied exactly the thing we needed you to study. So it's quite a difficult process, but we're always happy to do it and to look at them.
I think we have to map them, don't we? So we'll have a look at what you've studied, and we'll map what skills you've got against what our first years would have done. And then we can cross-reference to see if you're, and again, it's just to prevent you setting you up to fail. We want to make sure you're going to blossom on our course. So, but you probably find there are, in fashion courses, you have a proportion of textile design within them. So it's just perhaps how much you've done of something, potentially, if you're thinking of sort of crossing over from fashion to textiles.
Okay, thank you so much. Another question is, as these days, social media, many students use social media as their portfolio platform. So the question is, would my work uploaded on my social media account be reviewed if I present my social media link to university with my portfolio? Would it be a plus for my evaluation? So
it depends on the course.
Oh, okay. It depends on the course. It really
does. I mean, we sometimes, I just saw a portfolio this week where the student had created a brand new Instagram account and uploaded all of their work onto that account, specialized and as a sequence. And that was really useful. For some areas, particularly digital or graphics, we'd be interested to see what you're doing on Instagram, particularly. But it doesn't substitute for the story that a portfolio tells, because a portfolio, it's a book. I start at the beginning and I see the sequence, and it's very hard to do that on social media because of how the social media apps present things. But it's worth including, particularly photography, for courses where you're going to use social media, you're going to study how to use social media, then definitely do include it.
Okay, well noted. We have received very similar questions about they major, for example, like they major fine art for bachelor degree. For the master degree, they want to change, but still in the art major, but change to another subject. So in this case, we could advise as same as Megan just did, like it case by case, and could be reviewed by each professors and academics. Okay, so we have so many.
It really just depends on what she wants to sort of move into. Somebody that's done fine art, but that's done a lot of visual communication as part of that. Perhaps jumping into a graphic design course might be okay, but it might not be. So, we just, again, sort of non-standard application, it would be a case by case. I mean, an MA course is all about you are the master of a subject, aren't you? So it's self-negotiated. So it will be based on the power of kind of that portfolio with a personal statement to sort of say, this is where I want to go. And at MA, lots of people do cross across, because they've learned a certain amount and they want to sort of explore different skills. So I think we're open to those applications. But do your homework, I think, on that one, isn't it?
Yeah, right. So it's worth it trying. Yeah, it's worth it trying. So don't get scared about that. And
ask the questions. Go to the university and ask the questions. We're here to help you. So.
Exactly. So we are going to provide the contact details of each university's university rep on the chat box later. So if you have any further inquiries for like your own more personalized case, and don't hesitate to directly contact them. Right. And I'm going to give you another question. Oh. Yeah, a letter of recommendation. Should they get it from, art-related, someone from art-related job, or, university professor or the school teacher, or it should be non-art-related person who brought the recommendation letter?
It doesn't really matter, really.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the letter recommendation doesn't really cover lots of about arts. It's still okay. It's still okay.
It's just someone who knows that individual.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We're
So
looking
it's
for things like we're looking for things like evidence that you can work hard, that you are going to cope with setbacks. So, you know, I've had recommendations from, you know, Boy Scout troop leaders. You say, I've known him since he was 6 and he's been really, you know, he always figures out how to problem solve. That's brilliant. Or letters of recommendation from places where people have worked, you know, serving coffee, because they're looking for work ethic and things like that.
Team player, all of those.
Yeah.
So communication, empathy, all of those sort of skills you need to be basically a good human being. We just want to see evidence of it.
Oh, I see.
You'll need it in your creative program.
Okay, so for the recommendation letter, it's more about your personality and your attitude, while the personal statement is about the matching point between you and the institution itself. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So our next question is for the personal statement. As Megan say, limited words, and they want to know like roughly what makes and how many length makes good personal statement.
Now, I'm trying to remember something. If you're a UK student applying to a UK university, you have to use the standard system, and there is a word count in that. And I'm trying to remember what it is, because we are so used to that's what we think is normal. It's about a page.
Yeah, it's about it's maybe full page. It's about 250 words. 500 words. 500 words,
400 words. We don't normally have a limit. It's just we are very used to that length because the government admission system in the UK has that length. So if you use the UCAS system, but I generally don't look to read more than a page, unless you're applying for something like film production and you're including like a story or a piece of script writing as part of that. So, but that's a whole different process. Just the personal statement, you should be able to do it in a page, yeah. But we don't have a word limit. I don't think you'll be rejected, because I just might not read all of it, to be quite honest. If it's 50 pages long, like the 200-page portfolio, we just might not look at all of it.
I get it. Yeah, that's more realistic. Okay.
Yeah.
And our next question is about the portfolio. How to compose the portfolio. So the question is, when creating a portfolio, which part should I focus on? And she gave some, she or he gave us some examples like finer print such as books, and history of exhibitions she participated, and personal project progress. What do you want to see the most from this?
I don't mind answering that. I think so if I'm looking for 3 or 4 projects, perhaps covering 20, 30 pages, I'm a little bit traditional, and this goes back to potential and journey. I like to see things in chronological order so I can see how you've grown. So that's when I'm looking, and you have to remember we are looking at hundreds of portfolios. That is the clearest way for us to see your journey. So that's my preference at Coventry, how we like to see the work. So just think of it as a chronological journey, I think, and just put it in order, because ideally as you grow and as you sort of you're creating, you become more skilled. So your latest work should be your strongest work. So you leave us on a high by seeing your latest work. So that's how I like to see it at Coventry. Other universities, you can do sort of like your strongest work first to be a wow, a project in the middle and a really strong one at the end. But my preference is visually to see it in a timeline order.
Okay, actually, I personally have a question about this, because I also majored in fashion marketing, and that's exactly what I thought. Because if I share you my work not confident enough, then maybe I will lose my chance to look through until the end of portfolio. So I think many students think about that. So that's why they try to put the their most proud of work on the first page. And if you found that, the first or second work is not that charming, do you finish to read the portfolio?
No. We look through all of it. We look through all of it. We are looking to find students that are going to be curious, creative, passionate, and we will look through that work and we've trained ourselves to identify the best things out of that. We won't stop after page 2 like a book I don't like reading and then go, oh, that's it, I've had enough. We look through all of it and take, like I sort of said, it's more than the sum of its parts. We look at all of it and make a judgment of all of it together. I mean, there are some portfolios I've looked at that haven't been brilliantly strong, but how they visually communicated, laid out their work, they've got clear skills in visual communication and graphic design, but they haven't quite shown it in their work, but they've done it how they've put things together. So kind of we are really open to identifying the strengths in the project across all of it. So please don't think we stop after the first couple of pages.
Oh, that's really, really good information. So I really want the student to know about this and don't get scared about, showing your early initial works. Yeah, it's really going to help them. So thank you so much. And I think I might give you 1 or 2 more questions. Then I really want to Dr. Rose's opinion about this. So the students say, I'm curious about the prospect of getting a job at an art gallery or museum, art industry. So she wants to know about, the prospects for the employment in the UK as an international student.
Okay. Obviously, I'll talk on behalf of my program, which is Design for Industry. We do have a lot of students that do go on placement, which is part of the program, because there's actually what we call a 4-year thin sandwich. So in 2nd and 3rd year, from March, you go on to a placement period until September. And we have a placement team. I have very good contacts with people in industry. I always get them in to do presentations, and we also work on live projects as well. So the live projects actually leads on to a placement as well. So and I think 2 years ago, it's called something called Delhi data. Obviously, the guys at the university would know this. And for DFI, we were 2nd in the whole university for employability. So we do quite well. The program is about 40 odd years old, so we have lots of alumni that will support us. We do have Korean students that did go to actually worked in industry in London at a consultancy called Plan. Obviously, he or she can Google that, and we do have a lot. We do have a lot that do go into industry, but international students we do find tend to stay on and do a master's or do a PhD. So after that, obviously, that's a different story, really. But yeah, there's definitely support there. I'm not saying it's guaranteed. Nothing is. Yes.
Thank you so much, Rose. Okay. Yeah, there are so many questions we haven't covered yet, but as we're running out of time, so I may need to provide the contact information of each university reps so that you can actually directly contact them and get more personalized advice on that. So my colleague is going to share the contact information in the chat box, so please take a look. And I want to deeply appreciate all the speakers today for your great insights, and also university reps for wonderful support. So dear attendees, if you find this session inspiring and useful, please send a thank you message in the chat box. And this is the contact information of the university rep, and don't worry about this because we are going to provide in the chat box. And we are coming back in March for people who interest in the postgraduate course. So we are going to prepare more advanced content for that. So please follow us on KakaoTalk search 주한영국문화원 Study UK. We will keep you posted. And our team has randomly picked a person for our present. So attendees, please check your question box, which is My Question tab, and to check if you won. And if you won, you're supposed to get replied by my colleague. So please follow the information she provided. And everyone, thank you so much for joining our last session out of the 10 different webinar sessions today. And stay tuned for the upcoming events and the latest news for Study UK at our Kakao Talk. And once again, thank you all for joining today, including all the academics. And have a wonderful weekend and stay safe. Hope you see you next time.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.